Welcome to the eCommerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top founders and experts in the e-commerce industry and take an in-depth look at the struggles and successes in growing e-commerce brands profitably.
What's good, people? This is Josh Chin, the host of the eCommerce Profits Podcast, where we feature top experts and entrepreneurs in the e-commerce industry and we go behind the scenes of the struggles and successes in growing a brand. Welcome to 2023, and this is the first ever episode. This guest that I have today is someone who's really special, someone who's accomplished what many D2C entrepreneurs have been trying to accomplish for a long time, and he's done it. His name is Spencer Jan. Spencer is the co-founder of Solo Stove, an e-commerce company that he started in 2010 with just $15,000 with his brother. Sold it twice for a 9-figure valuation to private equity before finally going public on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker DTC at a peak valuation of over $2 billion. Wild ride in a very short amount of time. And I want to pick Spencer's mind on everything from raising his kids, growing the business, his life philosophy, to his obsessions in life right now, and what's next for him. So, Spencer, welcome to the show. It's long overdue. 6 months since
Thanks, Josh.
I brought up the idea of having you on the show.
Yeah. And when we met at Blue Ribbon, so that was fun, and glad we got to meet there, and happy to be on the podcast.
Shout out to Ezra Firestone. He's also a guest on the podcast, early guest from Smart Marketer. He also runs Boom by Cindy Joseph, Overtone, Zipify, and a bunch of other businesses. Cool guy, amazing dude. I consider him a mentor of mine and a good friend. And he's doing all these cool things and connecting people. So check him out, Ezra Firestone. Spencer, first question. I'm really curious about this. You've done a couple of pods, a couple of interviews since you sold the company. What is it like in terms of your being and your mindset right now, having gone through one full year, pretty much over one whole year of just not being in business anymore?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it's like with anything. I think it's easy to feel like where you're at is the norm, but you kind of go through this transition. And if I'm honest with myself, it's kind of it's definitely a new chapter, and it's definitely different than how I kind of operated before. And when I was running a company, I think lots of things changed, but I like to think like it changed gradually, even though you kind of go from running a company to selling it, and then moving on. But you quickly get comfortable with your new, or I've gotten comfortable with my new kind of situation. So it for me, I kind of feel like, oh, nothing's really changed. But if I'm honest, I think a lot's changed, and it's taken a little bit, but you get used to kind of the new norm. And the amount of time and freedom that I can now enjoy. In fact, I was on the golf course today with some buddies this morning. And we went out to breakfast, and then we went to the golf course and goofed around and hit some balls. And I was just thinking today, it was such a beautiful day outside. I was like, I'm just so glad I'm not working. It's a great feeling. And I guess I'm not the type that really loves to tout the hustle culture or grind real hard. And for me, I just like living life, and I feel like I've gotten to a place where I can do it very comfortably, and I enjoy that. And so, I kind of take it slow, and not, I don't miss the stress of business. I don't miss the stress of the grind. I'm okay just being, free with my time and able to hang out with my family and work on hobbies and myself, and I'm good with that. So life's good.
I have a couple of questions in mind from what you just shared. What does your typical day look like? And Let's go there. What does a typical day look like for you? And is there a routine that you still follow right now? Are you a routines guy, or are you kind of take the day as it comes kind of guy? And who do you hang out with?
Yeah, I'm not super. Yeah, I'm not super rigid when it comes to routines. I know there's a lot of that if you watch YouTube or listen to other content. Like there's some crazy morning routine where they jump in an ice bath and read books and meditate and all that stuff. And I don't know if I'm that rigid. For me, really, the day and the routines revolve more around my family's kind of. It's more around like the school year, right? So if the kids are in school, then we have that kind of set the routine in the morning. Like, when do I got to get them to school? When do I got to drop them off? And then, what time do I have before I go pick them up and go to their games and make sure they get run around to their activities at night, and making sure we're eating together at night. And so if it's the school year, it's kind of one routine. If it's the summer, when they're out, then it's really a different routine, because we're probably traveling or going places and staying busy. But I mean, right now, while they're in school, I mean, my daily routine is I'm up by about 7. I get my alarm set at 7:30, so I get up at 7:30. I'm kind of out the door by 8:30, taking the kids out to school, and then I have an office space, so I lease an office space that I have as kind of my own creative space, and I can take calls and I can meet people and I can do my own thing away from the home. So I come to my office space. I spend a little time in the morning doing scripture study. So I like making sure that I keep spirituality in my life and making it a priority. So it's the first thing I do is dive into scriptures for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, just depends where I'm going. And how I feel. Then after that, I try to do a little bit of exercise. So yoga, I like doing yoga. It's easy, and I'm not a young buck anymore, so I'm not trying to pump iron, but just trying to stay, not injured. Yoga does well for me. So I have a little yoga room that I set up, and I do. If anybody's looking to do yoga, YouTube, and there's Yoga with Adrienne. It's the greatest channel ever, and she just has like 30-day yoga, and I pay for the YouTube premium, so I don't have ads, but Yoga with Adrienne is like the best channel. It's so good. So I do Yoga with Adrienne, and then sometimes I'll go to the driving range, and hit some balls, or go to the gym. And so I try to get that physicality out in the morning, and then sometimes I'll kind of book my weeks and spread out calls, because there's always people that want to chat from the e-commerce groups that I'm kind of still in, so to speak. And so I just had one set up for tomorrow. So I'll have a call with a guy who wants to chat. And I had a call a couple of days ago with a Shark Tank company, and they wanted to reach out and chat. And so I can stagger kind of calls and helping other entrepreneurs. I kind of feel like a couple a week is enough for me at this point. And I'll spend time doing that. And then, grabbing lunch with a friend. And then before I know it, I'm picking up kids from school and going to their basketball games and soccer games. And then it's dinner with the family and hanging out at night. And so it's kind of a pretty lax pace, but I enjoy it. I feel like the default in me is to like go do more, especially after I just sold the company. You feel real antsy, and you feel like you got to do something, because everybody's asking like, what do you do? Like, what do you do with your time? It's like, well, it's a new norm for me, and it's hard for me to say like I do everything that anybody else would ever do, except I don't have to do the work part, which cuts out a lot of hours in the day, right? Because for those that are working long hours, there's a lot of time in there, right? That you now have back to yourself. So what do you do with it? I plan trips, and I built a home that we have as a vacation home. So I spent time working on building that home, and taking care of my home here, and running errands, and paying bills. Everything that just everybody tries to cram on the weekends and get in. I kind of have the whole week to do it. So
that's a good way to put it.
That's kind of the pace I go at.
And who do you hang out with? Because not everyone can afford to take day off in in the middle of the week to
Yeah.
hang out.
Yeah. Oddly enough, there's, I've been lucky in this area. There's a handful of guys that are more flexible in their day to day. Some have had exits. And so you kind of find people to hang around with. I have a small group of friends that I can call up and go golfing, or older guys that'll go fishing with, and they have a golf group as well. And so you find people to hang out with, but that social aspect for sure is important. So I try to make time to hang out with people.
When we met in Blue Ribbon, you mentioned that your obsession at the point in time was fishing, and really that's what that's all you wanted to do. And now it seems like that shifted a little bit to golf.
So yeah, no, I still fish a lot. Fishing has always been since I'm a kid. Since I was a kid, I fished a lot. So fishing is still in there. It's always in there. It's just I kind of picked up golf to kind of give me a new challenge. So yeah. It sounds funny because it's like, oh, these are just hobbies that people do. But when you don't have to have the stress of operating a company, these things kind of fill the gap in terms, at least for me, they fill the gap for me in terms of like a pursuit. And I think for me, business and entrepreneurship was just that. It was just a pursuit. It was a chase. It was a game that was easy to keep score, right? Because you have a P&L and you can watch the numbers tick if you're doing the right thing. And so I was very motivated when it came to starting and running a business, because I think just that, it was a pursuit. And I've always had different pursuits in life. A lot of them, you can consider them hobbies. But I think back in my childhood, and I spent a lot of time like skateboarding, and me and my brother, we would spend hours and hours every day working on one trick. And we would be out there after school till the lights turned on in the streets and it was dark, and we would still just go, just jumping off boxes and trying to perfect these things. And at another time I remember I picked up archery, and I would just shoot arrows in my basement. And, I set up this kind of mini range, and I would just be there hours and hours and hours. And I think my personality is kind of that way, is I'm kind of, I get easily obsessed with something, and I just want to like conquer it and perfect it. I was never good with team sports because I was always like gravitated towards individual pursuits. And I think that's why entrepreneurship for me was really, I did okay in it, because it was that individual pursuit of just chasing something down. And now, since, business and entrepreneurship, I can kind of put aside, I've just moved on and filled it with other things that I guess other people would call hobbies, fishing.
Where do you think that obsession comes from? How was it like growing up?
Yeah, I don't know where it comes from. I just know I've always had it, right? When I get into something, because I think about when we grew up and I spent years and years skateboarding, we would watch skate videos on VHS, and we would get skate videos from the skate store, and we would just rewind them and rewind them and rewind them and like watch them frame by frame by frame to understand like, how is he, doing this, backside kickflip or whatever. And we would just watch it frame by frame by frame. Like me and my brother would watch it, and nobody would talk. We would just like study it and just be like, okay, now let's go try it and let's figure that out. And so I don't know what it is. I think it's just a personality trait of like obsessing over something and just wanting to perfect it. Fishing's the same way, because fishing's very difficult. Every time you go out on the water, it's a different temperature. It's a different season. The fish are in a different pattern. Their location's always different. Like what they're honing in on at that time is different. And so it's always a chess game. And to figure it out quickly, you need to read the water. You need to know where the fish are. And then you take it from lake to river to fly fishing to just, if you're using a bait caster or spinning gear, like it's totally different. And so that's why I love fishing, because it always changes and it's always a challenge. And I think, it's always been attractive to me.
This is really fascinating to me. So you have at least from my perspective, it seems like achievement and conquering stuff. That's what drives you. That's what's really important to you. And you look out for opportunities where you could perfect something or hone a craft. When you were growing solo brands, that was the Solo Stove and Solo Brands, that was it. Now it's these projects. And how do you think about that transition? And would you ever go back into business again and start a new company?
Yeah, I mean, never say never, but at this very moment, I don't have a lot of drive to go do that, to start another business. I think because I feel like I'm okay with how things kind of turned out, and I feel like we've climbed one of the tallest mountains out there. That to go back and like try to climb or find like a bigger mountain to climb doesn't do a whole lot for me. Because I remember I was listening to a podcast today, and I remember hearing the founder talk about how if he was going to go do it again, he would want to go even bigger.
Yeah.
Right? Billion, like, multiple $1 billion company. And, to me, I don't feel like more numbers makes it any bigger, not necessarily any bigger of a challenge. It's just not, it doesn't make it any more attractive to me, to try to go conquer. I feel like business is business. And I feel like I gave it a decade of my life, doing what we did and building our company. And I don't personally feel like I have anything left to prove to myself. And, I like to think I don't have a huge ego. So it's not like I'm trying to prove it to anybody else. Like that doesn't do it for me at all. Like to wear a badge saying I did X, Y, Z. I feel like I did it for my family and for myself and for my brother and for those that were involved. I feel like we did it, and it's time to move on. It's like, what's next? I know I can do that, but can I go be a scratch golfer? That's harder at this point. And that draws me in a little bit more. Can I go catch a double digit bass? Right? Can I go, fly fish XYZ river and do well on it and understand it? Like, I think those things draw me a little bit more. So you can call it burnout or whatever it is. I think you just have different seasons in life. And for me, there was a season where business and entrepreneurship was it. But I feel like I've that season's kind of, changed a little bit for me now. And I don't know if it'll come back. But for now, I'm very content.
You have what I think. Well, I'm pretty sure someone said this, like some philosopher or something. You have what most people don't have, and what you have is enough. That's what people don't have. I think that's really interesting to see, especially coming from just personally. Being in the journey, it's really difficult to envision what life is like not thinking about work all the time. And owning a business is kind of like that. So one of the things that you mentioned, Spencer, and when we had a conversation back in May of last year, and also in a couple of interviews that you've done, is that you never really resonated with the hustle culture of just working super long hours and grinding all the time, weekends and stuff. You kind of wanted time for yourself, and you respected the time that you were working and worked really, really hard, but you also respected the boundaries of that. I want to hear your thoughts on, and you speak to a couple of quite a number of entrepreneurs as well. Your thoughts on that mindset versus the drive of wanting to achieve, which is pretty common in entrepreneurs, that I'm impatient and I want to get things done quickly and I want to achieve a lot, but at the same time respecting the boundaries of work and having balance in life. How do you juggle that as you're growing Solo Stove?
I don't think I can't profess that we did it very well. I mean, it was always aspirational and it's always what we wanted. And in the back of our mind, that's the goal. And I think because we had a hard time juggling, we went down the path of selling because it was more of an out and an exit and a light at the end of the tunnel when things started to become very unbalanced. So by no means do I profess like we had great balance, but it was always something we were trying to achieve. And I think it's just really understanding or really kind of articulating to yourself and to your business partner or to your spouses or whatever, why are you working so hard? Like for what? What are you trying to achieve? And I think those motivations are the motivations, if they're true and deep enough, those are the motivations that get you through hard times, right? And so for me, those motivations were my time back. If I'm my own boss, right? We always had this idea, if I'm my own boss, I get to control everything, including how much I work. And to a certain degree, that's true. It's just, it is difficult because the buck stops with you. And if you don't have a big team, you got to do a lot of the work. And a lot of that spills over into the evenings, into the weekends. And we found that to be really true. I mean, we bought into the 4-hour work week, but we quickly felt like it was this pipe dream, or it was a kind of an illusion that we would never achieve. Because while we kind of achieved it for a small, short time where we were like, yes, we got the lifestyle business and we got our time, it quickly snowballed into something bigger where we had to hire more people and deal with more because business was good, right? We were doing well with the business, and that just meant it was growing, which meant it was more work. So I feel like it's always been important for me. I don't like trying to find balance and trying to spend time with your family and all of that. It's always been very aspirational and stuff that we've always tried to make business decisions around and kind of guided by that principle. I feel like we did fairly well. I feel like my brother actually did better than I did in really setting up boundaries and saying, I'm going home at 5. And there were times where I would just be like, oh, like, why are you leaving right now? Like, I get that it's 5, but we have so much to do, and can't you just stay for another? But he was really good at setting those boundaries. I don't think I was as good. And I feel like that's what led us to, thinking of selling the company, because we were like, this isn't serving our life. So, when it comes to achievement, we never set out to say we wanted to achieve, a certain number in terms of profits or revenue or whatever. We were always talking about achieving our time and owning our time back, and what does that take, and how do we get to that spot? And that was always the goal for us. That's always what we focused on. You mentioned patience, and I think that is something that it can't be overstated, and it's yet
undervalued.
Kind of, I don't know. I don't know if it's easily. I don't know if it's easily like. It's so, because patience to one person might not be patience to another, right? Somebody be like, yeah, I'll be patient I'm super patient. And the person waits, is only willing to do it, put in time for a year. And the other person's like, yeah, I'm somewhat patient, and he'll do 5 years, So I think it's very subjective, but for sure, nothing comes quick when it comes to business. And if it does, it's the exception to the rule. And those kind of businesses that are, like grow super fast, and those make the headlines real easy because they are the exception to the rule. Most business take a long time, and ours took close to a decade to build. And so, slow and steady for us always was the motto. And I think it was helped by us not caring about what other people were doing. Like, we didn't attend any seminars, we didn't attend any masterminds, or we never met any other entrepreneurs that were doing what we were doing. And I don't know if that was, the only time I started going to like conferences or meeting people was after I sold the company. And because we were always very secretive about like what we were doing, we didn't want anybody to catch on to what we were doing. We felt like we had different skills and tips and tricks that we learned, that why would we want to share it with anyone else? And so, and plus we were so busy that we were just like, put your head down and just keep working. There's so much to be done. Why do we need to go meet and hang out with people and have dinners with other people? And we kind of put blinders on, put our heads down, really didn't know what anybody else was doing. And then by the time we got through it, we were like, oh, we did pretty good, like comparatively.
Okay.
But I think if you meet other people and other entrepreneurs, they're going to tell you, like, everybody's going to try to, make up for their insecurities and tell everybody how well they're doing. And that kind of creates that FOMO in other people, right? And can quickly lead you to make decisions that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise made because you heard somebody's doing really well in this business and they made these decisions. And so maybe I should go do it. And so I'm a big proponent of just put your head down. If you're a good entrepreneur, you should know what you need to do for the next how many years. Like for me, I had this ever growing list of to-dos. And if I'm just sitting around not knowing what I should be doing, then I think I'd be destined to fail. I think any entrepreneur who doesn't know what they should be doing is pretty much destined to fail. But if you know what you need to do, you just don't have the time, or you're just not efficient, or you need to work harder and smarter, then there's no need to like go, venture out and go chase all the shiny objects and listen to all these different things that could kind of become distractions if you're not careful. So I guess that's how we practice
that's
patience.
A contrarian view.
Putting blinders on.
I think most people would say, go talk to people, go network, go get differing opinions, and broaden your point of view. I think what you're alluding to is that most people wouldn't tell you the full story, and it's going to be littered with just crap and noise. From what I've gathered from just talking to you and just interacting with you in my research and watching your videos, you're someone that comes across as a straight shooter, someone who understands signal from noise pretty well, and you're really direct, and you're straight to the point, and you're not afraid of kind of rubbing people the wrong way or saying the wrong thing. You say it as it is. Is that just who you are, or is that a skill that you kind of had to hone and develop over time?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's probably more just a personality trait. I think I'm not a very complicated person, so thinking through things, the easier it is to understand, the easier it is to execute in my mind. So it's, for me, I like to keep things simple and just not complicated. So I think that's served me well as I've looked at business decisions or situations that might seem daunting or complex, and just trying to simplify it down to like, okay, what do we need to do? Like, what is the actual problem and how do we solve it? And what do we do? And let's just go do that. And so I don't know. I think, business isn't as complicated as people can make it out to be. I feel like everybody wants to sound smart, but really you just got to put one foot in front of the other and just keep going and let those efforts compound for like 10 years and you'll have a great business. But that's kind of how I think about it. I don't know if I'm necessarily smarter than the next. I think I just kind of keep it simple. And for me, that makes it easy to then go execute and put, one foot in front of the other. That's
really interesting to hear. And I think this comes a timely conversation for me. I know you don't mean it as an advice, but I'm taking it as an advice. That patience means being consistent and keeping up with the effort over an extraordinarily long amount of time, and not looking for the next hack or the next tip or the big thing. And that's a trap that we get caught into very quickly, I think, in the D2C space, just because it's changing so quickly and new channels are coming up and new tools and tricks, and it's easy to get distracted. So timely. How?
Yeah. I think there's
go.
I'll add one more thing there, because I think one of the things my brother would always say is like, and I think it's a Charlie Munger thing, because he's a big Charlie Munger, like Warren Buffett kind of.
Okay, so you guys didn't meet people, but you read a lot. Is that how you got new information?
Yeah, my brother read more than me, and he would share a lot. Yeah, he would share a lot with me. I'm not a huge reader, but I would always, pick up a book here and there. But he would always say, like, if you just keep your expectations, if you set your expectations really, really low, then you'll always feel great about yourself. Like you'll never be disappointed.
Amazing. Yeah.
And so for us, that was kind of it. What's funny is like we, on paper, it looks like we had this, and it was an amazing success from a business standpoint and an outcome. But our expectations were never, ever close to being that high. They were so low that, any small win, we'd just be like over the moon and be like, oh, we're doing awesome. Because we didn't care about what anybody else was doing. And we set our expectations pretty low that it just was easy to stay in the game when you feel like you're winning all the time. And so instead of having like these far out, like I want to exit for X amount of dollars or build it whatever, we never ever thought about that. And it wasn't like, oh, don't think about that. I want to think about that, but let's not think about that. It wasn't even in our mind of like that could ever be a possibility. We were just like one foot in front of the other. We know what we got to do today. We know we got to do tomorrow and next week. So let's just go do and kind of enjoy the journey along the way and have those small wins as we kind of set our expectations really low. So I think patience that, kind of goes along with patience, and that, you got to stay in the game for a long, long time. And so how do you do that? You kind of just, you got to be more steady and even keel. And I think part of that's just with expectations. You don't put too much on yourself in terms of achieving this great, big, grand outcome. That it's just easy to just look at your to-do list and say like, yeah, I know what I need to do today and tomorrow and next week.
I keep telling people as a joke that my favorite quote is from a TV series called Modern Family. If you've watched that show, it's pretty popular. It's a sitcom, and the main character Phil Dunphy said this one episode, and that just caught my attention. He said the secret to happiness is low expectations, and the secret to a happy marriage, low expectations.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of the same.
So I guess it wasn't him; it was Charlie Munger. But yeah, great perspective still. How did your roles differ between you and Jeff, your brother? And did that change over time?
Yeah, while we were building the company, for sure, it evolves and grows over time. I mean, at the beginning, it was just let's get a lot of things done, and we would just split up, whatever needs to be done. And do you want to do this? And do you want to do that? And I think we would just gravitate towards what we were interested in doing. And so if somebody had an idea, then generally that person would go do it because it's like, well, it's your idea. You seem excited about it. Go do it. Okay. And if it was my idea, I'd be like, okay, I think we should do this. Like, great. Go do it. And so it was just a lot of that. There wasn't like this hard line of division in terms of, who should do what. I think later when the company grew and we had more people, there was definitely more of that trying to divide it up by teams and departments and trying to do it together. And, I'll be the first to say we probably didn't do it very well. But it was a matter of like, well, what do you want to do? Are you interested in doing this? And then two, are you, good at it? For instance, I did a lot more of the supply chain stuff because I had all the experience with China and I can speak Mandarin. And, I was able to communicate with that side a lot better than my brother. And so my brother would take some of the other stuff like fulfillment or some of the operation stuff or some of the marketing stuff. And we'd both work on customer service. So, it's just a natural kind of gravitating to what you're good at. And we just kind of knew what each other was good at. And so we would just kind of split the work that way. And then, of course, as the company grew and we would have to divide by departments and do that. But we did a lot of stuff just kind of in step, always kind of communicating with each other. Like, this is how it's going. What do you think? What do you think I should do? And then, be a sounding board for each other. But we weren't, we did things pretty in step, pretty in line, did a lot of things together, made a lot of decisions together for instance, when we decided to put our fulfillment center, bring it all in house and create our own fulfillment center, we went out and we saw the places together. We talked about all the places, what we would need. We designed it out together. We designed all the offices together. Like, we just do it together. Part of it was because that's just more fun for us. And, business is business, and there's probably like very efficient and smart ways to do it. But I'd rather do it the way I want to do it. And I feel like if anything, that's the liberty you get when you own your own business. It's like you get to do it however you want. Nobody can tell you it's wrong, right? You don't have a boss saying, well, that's not very efficient. For me, it's like, yeah, I know it's not efficient, but it's fun. And, if anything, I'm going to try to make it the most enjoyable, situation and circumstance that I can. And if that means it's not efficient, I don't care. Like, it's fun. I'd rather do it fun and have fun along the way. So that's kind of how we did it, which obviously as we looked to sell the company had to change. And that's the whole process of enterprising and getting it ready for sale. And that's more of a not fun process for us because it was counterintuitive to what we thought would be fun.
And you took a relatively different route to most. I think I kind of see why, and I think a lot more entrepreneurs need to do that, but not many do it because of ego, because of just not enough self-awareness or something. But you hired a CEO pretty early on in your journey before selling the company.
Yeah, before selling, I wouldn't say early on. We actually hired him about 6 months before we sold. And so 6 months
was
before
it a part of the process?
We signed an LOI, I guess. What do you mean part of the process? Like part of, it was part of getting ready to sell.
So, okay. So you knew that you were going to sell, and then you went out looking for a CEO.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm mistaken. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
So we knew that was, so the management team was key for us to be prepared to then go to market and sell. Because we wanted to be, as founders wanting to step out of the operations, we obviously needed somebody in there to be the man who would be running the company, after we exited. And so we tried to make that transition before we sold, and bring someone on. And so that when we went to market and to sell, we would say, hey, look, we're the founders, but we're not running this anymore. And it's in great hands and poised for growth. And it's grown beyond what we can even do. So, the business doesn't need us. So the fact that us selling and leaving the company has zero effect. If anything, it's better for the business that we're not operators. Smart. So it was very intentional, very planned. Yeah. Yeah. I figure.
Did you take a cut on your EBITDA to pay a CEO? Or was it kind of like, all right, I was a CEO, here, take my salary, I'll take a step back, and you get a bonus kind of situation?
Yeah, kind of, because you have different add backs that you can put back into the company. And I think the salaries that we had taken would obviously be no longer salaries in the company. And then him coming in, was a salary, but I don't think it was a big hit on EBITDA. I think our EBITDA was always growing. And so we were hiring at a healthy pace. So it wasn't a matter of, if we had 0 employees, would our EBITDA be better? Yeah, but you can't do that and like wipe out all your employees. And
so it wasn't significant.
That's the right move. Okay. You obviously need them all. So yeah, I don't think I wouldn't think of it. If anybody's thinking of like, oh, I don't want to hire because it's going to hurt my EBITDA, I think, well, if you don't hire, you probably won't sell your company. So who cares about, your multiples and EBITDA at that point? It's definitely needed. You have to build a company that has value, and there's value in having a management team in there that people believe in. So,
and along the way between, so in 2016 was when you first got the idea of, all right, maybe I could sell my company, right? And when you finally sold in 2019, there was massive growth between those 2-3 years, right? Massive growth. But in between, you could have sold as well to probably a Trasio type company. Were they around back then?
No, like all those aggregators, they were not there. So it wasn't, I don't think there were those options. Maybe they were,
Okay.
we just didn't stumble upon them. Yeah, we weren't thinking. So, I mean, we got the idea to sell, and then we kind of hunkered down for 3 years and built the company to sell in the way that we thought was the best way. And that was to private equity. So, we had our numbers that we wanted to hit, and we had an outline in our heads of how big the company needs to be and how many people and kind of the systemization of everything that, we didn't think too much about, should we sell now? Or, a year later, should we sell now? We were just focused on, we set a timeline. We said, we're going to go to market at this time. So let's not think about it. Let's just, we have to do what we need to do on our list for today, tomorrow, and the week, and the month. And we're very focused on just getting stuff done for a period of time, as opposed to constantly thinking, should we sell today or should we sell tomorrow? Or it was
that's so interesting because on one hand, you're saying that, okay, you have these massive ambitious goals that are aspirational in nature, and you kind of want to strive for them, the goals that you want to strive for. But at the same time, you're balancing that with the dichotomy of having low expectations and not pegging your self-worth and joy on achieving that goal. I personally find it really hard to do, because when I set a goal, I take that personally. And when I don't hit that, I get really sad. And that's, how do you juggle that relationship? Or am I looking at it the wrong way?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, the goal for us was to sell. And so it was less about how much we sell it for.
Right.
Like, we knew we were going to sell it. And, to what valuation, we had no idea, because it's kind of like selling a home. You don't know what it's worth until you put it up on the market and you start getting offers. So it's less about thinking my business is worth X, Y, and Z, and so I need to achieve that and I want that. It was a more of just, this is what we're doing. We're going to build our company the best we can. We're going to create the most value we can. And we're going to do it by all these things that are in our control. And then we're going to let the outcome come. And we know when that outcome is going to happen roughly, because we kind of set that time out there. So it was less pegged, our quote unquote success wasn't pegged on a number or an outcome. It was more pegged on on just kind of that journey of achieving all the milestones we needed to achieve, and the final one being selling. And so if we got, $25 million, we would be like, okay, well, that's what it was worth. We put in the time, we did our best, and that's what we got. But if it was, 100 million, 200, 300 million, then it would be like, okay, that's what we get to, like, that's what the market decided to give us. And so we're okay with that. I think it kind of goes along, like, I'm just thinking of maybe an analogy, and it kind of goes along with my investing philosophy of just, the Jack Bogle Vanguard way of just buy low cost index funds and let it compound over time, and let the market give you what you deserve, right? Not any more, not any less, just whatever the market is willing to give you, that's what you get. And I think that's how we went about selling our company, was just, let's do everything in our control. And then the final valuation and price and outcome, well, that's somebody else deciding, right? And we can story tell and try to increase that value, but it's what they give us. And so we never pegged it to that. It was just, we're going to sell our company and get our time back. And for us, that was the bigger goal. And we knew we had that in our grasp. All we had to do was just, check all the boxes and finish up everything that we set out to do and sell the company, and we'd have all our time back. And, we knew the financial reward would be there. To what degree, we had no idea. And it turned out to be a lot more than I ever imagined.
Right. So you hired a CEO 6 months before you got your LOI. When did your CFO come in? Because you had a CFO from private equity as well. And that probably helped quite a fair bit.
Yeah, it did for sure. About the same time. So maybe he came in after the CEO. So he was probably there, 4 or 5 months, 4 months or so before we started to really get into the process. yeah, and he just came by referral, and we met with him and decided he was a good fit. And he kind of, it was a great, it was great that he came from private equity, because since we were selling to private equity, he was able to do a lot of the due diligence work that's required, and put it in, all the spreadsheets that those PE guys need to see, which I couldn't do. So it was good. It worked out really well.
When you sold the first time, what was the EBITDA that you were working with? So you don't have to tell me the exact numbers, but what was it like? Was it low 8 figures? High 7 figures?
Yeah, it was. No, I don't think we were in the 8 figures. It was in the 7 figures.
Okay.
Yeah, mid 7 figures around there.
Right.
Mid 7 figures. I think we were around there. Yeah. So it wasn't a crazy huge business in terms of EBITDA, but revenues were good, profits were good, and everything was growing, and it was heading in the right direction.
What was it like? Was it doubling year after year, or was it like a double-digit growth type of thing?
I don't remember in terms of percentage year over year. People, if they want, you can look up the S1, which is the filing, the SEC filing that companies need to put out public before they go public. And a lot of the year over year numbers are in there, so you can dig around in those S1s and see what all the numbers were. But it was good growth. I don't know if it was 100% every year, or maybe even more than 100% every year for the past few years leading up to it. But it was good growth, and good trajectory, and that's part of the puzzle when you go sell a company, is making sure that you can have
talking about the hires. Just a quick segue here. Before you're CEO, and as you're scaling between 2016 to 2018, what were the key hires that you made were there key hires that you made that changed the course of the business as you scaled?
Yeah, I don't think there's one that's like, absolutely, skyrockets your business. I think that's probably not a good way of looking at it. I think every hire was a good hire. Every position that we needed to fill needed to be filled. And so, little by little, brick by brick, everything was kind of put together. So all the way from the bottom up of customer service, was that a key hire? It was probably one of the lower paying hires, but for us, it was key, right? It like freed us up from having to deal with customer service. And then, you build upon that with graphic designers and marketers, email marketers, social marketers. I think we had a couple graphic designers, someone over logistics, and, just a handful of different people doing a lot of the digital marketing. And then, and then you have fulfillment and warehousing and all of that. So, I mean, all of them were important, and all of them were good key hires. We had one guy that we hired, who was over graphic design, that I think is now the director of brand or design at Solo.
That's awesome.
And so he's still there. And another guy that we hired was over performance marketing. So a lot of the paid ads and stuff he ran, and he was a very early hire, and I think he's still there and doing really, really good. And he got to stand on the podium when we went public in the New York Stock Exchange. And it was so cool to, see these guys that we hired do really well and kind of grow in the company. So yeah, all key hires. I mean, the CEO,
are they still with
the
Solo?
CFO, all these guys were key. I don't think. Are they still with Solo? Yeah. All those guys are still there. It's the same CEO we hired. The CFO has changed, but the former CFO that we hired is still in the company. He's now the president of a Solo Stove, that brand within the portfolio. So they're all still there, and all good hires. And you always get bad hires, and you have to kind of filter through them and find good people to fill those spots. But
you mentioned this, and you inspired me to implement the same thing in my company. EOS, Traction by Gino Wickman was the book, and EOS is the framework, entrepreneurs operational system. how much of your progress would you attribute to implementing that?
Yeah, it's hard to put a number on it, but we needed something as we were growing to kind of give us a framework to help us structure teams,
right,
and hold people accountable, and that was super helpful. And I would recommend any small business looking to kind of grow and scale and build teams to kind of look at something like that. I know there's a bunch of different ones, but EOS for us worked well. Traction by Gino Wickman, and kind of the implementation materials that you can get to help you kind of round out your teams and get the right people in the right seats, and all rowing in the right direction. That was super, super helpful for us as we were growing the team. So yeah, I don't think they use it anymore.
Yeah.
I think they've grown far beyond it. But for me and my brother as like solo entrepreneurs trying to figure it out, that's always a tough spot to kind of grow beyond that initial phase of building a team, and how do you do it and how do you keep it all organized. So yeah, EOS is a good one.
What is your most useful, in your opinion, most useful strength on hindsight as you're building solo and even till now?
I think I always feel like I'd be a good mouse in a maze, because for me, I've learned that I can always find the solution or a solution if I just kind of keep butting my head against the wall. And if it doesn't work, I change directions and try something else, or call someone else, or talk to someone else, or ask dumb questions to the first 10 people, and then on the 11th person I can actually be hold an intelligent conversation, and I'm okay with not knowing how to do something because I'll figure it out by just trying. And it kind of sounds silly, but I think any entrepreneur needs to have that kind of mindset of just, you're not going to know all the answers, but that's the nature of the job. Like if you want to be an entrepreneur, by definition, it's just like you're the person that has to figure it out and try it and understand how to get things to work. I think for me, I wouldn't say it's a superpower, but for sure I've seen I'm different that way, in that I don't think things through too much and too deep to be like, oh, I really need to research this problem and come up with a really intelligent solution. I just go try it. Like, push this button. If it didn't work, I'll push a different button. If that doesn't work, I'll go ask someone, what buttons did you push? Then I'll try those buttons. And I just keep going and going and going.
Right.
And, doing it over so many years, I've just realized that
kind of like the skateboarding
that
thing.
Just gets stuff done. And there's nothing really that's ever popped up. Yeah. Just try it over and over and over. And, not doing the same thing, but trying, like tweaking something, changing it, right? Changing your approach and trying to attack it from a different angle, or thinking about it a different way. And, I think for me, that's the kind of superpower that I brought to our dynamic duo of simple entrepreneurs. We were pretty, I didn't even study business, so I had no idea. Like when it came to accounting, I would have to ask people, because I'm like, I don't even know, what should I be looking at here? Like, why, and what does this mean? But if you're willing to ask a ton of questions and just keep trying different things, you eventually get through it all. And I feel like 10 years of that has taught me, that actually is a skill. It's actually a good skill to have, to keep trying different things and not getting upset, or just being okay not knowing how to do things. Because once you're okay with that, and you just go about it and keep trying until you get it done, and you're like, oh, figured it out. It wasn't that hard. So yeah, I think for me, that's what I take. I mean, obviously I feel like I'm good at sourcing products. I feel like I'm good at working with manufacturers. I feel like I'm good with understanding how manufacturing processes work and how machines work and all of that. So there's probably, other skills that were obviously beneficial to growing a business, but,
let me dive a little bit deeper here. And this is so I posted on my Instagram Follow me on Instagram, by the way, at Josh Chin with 2 N's. And I told my audience that I was going to interview you, and I asked what questions should I ask Spencer, and there was a question. I forgive me, but I cannot remember who posted this, but it was really good. What are some of the things that you feel you see that other DTC entrepreneurs might not, and that led to your success? I think I'm paraphrasing here, but so what are some of the things that you see that others don't in the DTC space?
Geez, I don't know if I do have certain things, it kind of makes it sound like there's some secret thing that, I know that others don't. I think everything's out there. I see, I think the way I've always thought about D2C is it's no different than regular retail. It's just everything is online. So that sounds stupid, but let me put it this way. When people are always like, well, what should I do? How do I sell? And all this stuff. I always think about it and say, well, think of your online store as any store on a street. And what do you need to do to attract people to come into your store to actually take a look? And, if you think about it that way, you can imagine maybe the ice cream store down the street and somebody standing outside with maybe, taste tests. And so, okay, well, if they're using taste tests to get people into their store to buy ice cream, how does that, how can you translate that into an online marketing tool, right? How can you give somebody else taste tests? Oh, maybe free trials. Maybe you get people to sign up, right? That you can then give and offer something free of small value that kind of leads them in to get their email address so that you can continue to market to them. And I've always seen it that way because at the end of the day, I mean, when it comes to D2C, it's just traffic. It's just building traffic and finding and then optimizing conversions. And so for me, if there's anything that I say, like, what do I see that others don't? I just see it as really, really simple. Because you can easily get lost in the D2C world with all the buzz terms and all these marketing tools and all these data, talk about data and analytics and all these crazy things that you got to have this plugin and you got to make sure that your store has this because this leads, it's just, it can be very, you can become very disconnected with the retail shopping experience. That I just like to keep it simple and dumb it down to the simplest terms. And that's just, how do you attract more people? How do you get your traffic? And then how do you convert them? And so I always see it as it's no different than a store on a street. What would you do? How do you get people into your store? When they come into your store and look around, what are you doing to interact with them? Right. And then what are you doing to recommend things? What are you doing to understand who they are and talk to them and meet them where they are? And like all these things, and then translate that online, right? How do you achieve that online? And that's how you start to understand, oh, I need this tool or I need that tool. But where other people, I think I've seen kind of get lost is that they see 1,000 different tools and say like, okay, I need all these tools to start doing it. Why isn't it working? And to me, it's like, well, you gathered all these tools and you have no idea what you're doing with them. It's not like you can just plug them in and suddenly you're selling a ton. So I think it's a matter of keeping things simple and just understanding that D2C, it's tech enabled. A lot of people feel like, D2C is kind of like, this tech world. It's not. It's just you're selling something. Right? You're just selling one thing that somebody needs to use, and you just have to treat it, in its most simplistic form. And if you approach it that way, I feel like you can come up with endless ideas of marketing tactics and different ways to, interact with your customer and have reasons why and where that leads to in the journey of them buying something from you. I guess that's what I would say. I mean, it's not a secret, but I think if you simplify it down, it's easier to understand. Then you build your list of to-dos, and you're like, wow, I got a lot of work to do, and just start hacking away at it instead of feeling like there's some magic hack to selling a lot. I just don't think there is, at least not in a sustainable way.
Love that. Let's shift gears a little bit. Your life now moving forward, this is a journey that you're kind of exploring different paths, and it seems like you're really enjoying it. And what's really interesting is that every time that I speak to you, you allude to your kids quite a fair bit. And I think that's really inspiring. I don't have kids, but I'm just fascinated with entrepreneurs with kids and how they think about raising the next generation. Because we kind of think a little bit differently than the crowd, and we lead lifestyles that are, realistically really different from people that just in general. How are you raising your kids knowing what you know now that might be different from what people do?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard one. I don't like to compare myself with, others and thinking that I'm doing it right and they're doing it wrong. I think anybody who's been a parent knows that it's a impossible task. It's
on the fly,
something that we all learn, on the job, and trying to figure out, on the fly, and trying to figure out what the best way is to navigate parenthood. And, each kid is individual. Each kid has a different personality. So it's hard to say like, oh, you should do it this way because it's what I did with my kid or whatever. It's a very tricky thing. It can be a very thankless job as well, as you don't see the ROIs. So maybe way down the road, and maybe even then you don't see the ROIs come back to you, or you don't feel like they've come back. But, I've always lived by, or try to live by, a quote that I've heard in my circle is that no success can compensate for failure in the home. And, I love a book called How Will You Measure Your Life by Clayton Christensen, who was a Harvard business school professor. He's since passed, but it's a great book, and it really brings in perspective just what's important to you in life. And I think while business, can teach you a lot of things, and it definitely has taught me a lot of things, I think it's definitely not required, to be a really successful entrepreneur in order for you to be a really successful parent. And so I feel like, the more time you spend doing anything, the better you're going to get at it. So if I spend more time trying to be a parent, then I feel like I have a better chance at being good at it. And if I go spend my time elsewhere, then I probably am spending less time trying to be a parent, and I'll probably be worse at it. So it really comes down to priorities and what you feel is important. And some people don't have kids or choose not to have kids. And, these are individual choices, but I've decided that I want to try to be a really good parent. And that requires time. And that's, the one thing that we all have the same amount every single day. So for me, it was, how do I go about parenting is like, one, just spend the time trying. And I feel like if I'm doing that, it's really all I can do. And that's why I'm not, diving back into building a business or going off and doing crazy ventures. I try to keep my time focused on making sure that I'm allocating enough to the family to kind of be a responsible parent.
That's awesome.
But
that reminds me of this interview that my friend Noah Kagan, who runs AppSumo, and he's big on YouTube as well. And interestingly, he does a lot of YouTube videos, and that's kind of his current obsession. And he does it really well. He had a guest on where he interviewed who founded this company called Kinko's. A guy by the name of Paul Orfalia. I'm butchering his name, but Paul, and he mentioned something that really caught my attention. He said that success to him is having kids that when they grow up, they still want to hang out with you. And that was, I don't know why, but that was really profound to me. That's really interesting to view success as that, when the guy sold his business for $1.5 billion, and eventually that company became was resold for, I think, close to 3 billion or 2.5. So very, very successful guy, and he's in his a stage of his life where he's not trying to build new things anymore, and he's it's just a very fascinating conversation. But yeah, guys, go check out the Noah Kagan's YouTube videos. It's really good. And I think that when you separate the entrepreneur from the parent, it becomes really interesting to think about, because your kids don't necessarily care if you made $1 billion or $1 million from your business. They kind of just care about if you're home and if you're there for their events and moments and occasions. So it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, it's very true. I think it's just time, right? And that's why for me, time is, the greatest thing that's come out of my entrepreneurial journey is just I figured out a way to get all my time back. And I don't think you have to have a massive outcome like we did, but to be able to wake up every day and say, like, I can use my time any way I want. I think that to me is way more valuable than however many zeros are in the bank. It doesn't. Time elsewhere. And I think you're right. Like, time with people you care about, and it doesn't have to be your kids. It could be your spouse. It could be, friends and family. Or I think those are the most important things that, we have while we're on earth. And I don't think on my deathbed I'm really going to care what happened in my business life. I had a great time. I mean, we learned a lot, and it was a great journey, and it was a great season of life. But I just don't think I'll be thinking about, boy, we really made a lot of money, as my last thought as I'm dying on my bed. Like, I hope that's not my last thought, because that would be pretty meaningless. I think you'd care about who's around you and whose life you affected and who you helped, and who you love and who love you. And I think, to me, that's probably worth working on as much as you can. For entrepreneurs that are still grinding out there, and try to find a balance, try to find time to do those things. Because if business there's no guarantee in it, for sure, right? It could go one way or the other, and you might as well have a good journey, and you might as well have spent time building relationships that matter. Because if maybe the dollars aren't there at the end of the day, at least you have relationships, and that's probably worth more, right, than any dollar amount you could have. Although, having financial security is always a goal, but I think you have to really look down deep and spend time in those places that are important, but sometimes are hard to, it's easy to procrastinate in those areas.
Fires are burning and things need attention.
Yeah.
All right. Final question, and then we'll wrap up. But I know that you don't talk about this a lot, but you spend a lot of your money on charity work and giving back to your school, to your community, to your church. And I'm curious about how you think about your money. How much are you investing that money? How much are you planning to give to your kids? Or are you not giving anything to your kids at all? What's your thoughts on money?
Yeah, I think, where do you start? I think for me, I try not to put it at the forefront of everything. it's sufficient for our needs, and I feel like that's great. You don't sit around and just, it's funny because I just watched with my son. We just finished watching The Hobbit. The three, and at the end you have this dragon who just lays around in all this gold, and then the hobbits that want to go back and take over the gold, and it kind of consumes them. And there's this weird, kind of play on how this gold changes people and how it's evil. I don't think money's evil, but it can definitely amplifies kind of your intentions, right? And so if you really have a huge ego and really need the affirmation of others, and maybe you go crazy and you go buy a whole bunch of supercars and a giant home and a yacht, and maybe you go that route, which probably isn't great and healthy. I just hope that, as it amplifies who I am, it's in a positive light, including my kids as well. And maybe at a period of time, they're able to use it to amplify, hopefully, whatever good that they have that they want to shed on the world. I really don't put it at I try not to put it at the forefront of things, and just try to live my life as I would anyways. I'm a pretty frugal guy. I don't live too lavishly, and I feel like that served me well up till now. So why change it? In terms of the kids and what it means for them, I always tell them they're not going to get anything. They're going to make their own way and carve their own way. And that's the right way to go about it, because the lessons they're going to learn, and the struggles they're going to have, those are the things that are character building. And it would be irresponsible for me to kind of take those opportunities to learn away from them by just making money accessible to them to just be able to solve every, problem that they encounter. That's probably not the right way to do it. So, I've done my estate planning and set it up in a way that's, that suits my needs and my desires for how I want things to kind of happen. But of course, kids are young. As they get older, maybe that changes. I think you kind of evolve with situations, but I try not to have it be something at the forefront of our lives, and and just go about our days. I remember hearing, I forget where I heard it from, but one guy said after his big exit, and somebody asked the same question, how does it change your life? And he says it doesn't at this point. He says the only thing now is like when I go to the Mexican store or a Mexican restaurant,
the extra avocado,
for avocado, like you get the extra scoop of expensive avocado. Yeah, it's just like you wouldn't before, because it's like $2 for a scoop of avocado or guacamole. But that's kind of it, right? It's at a certain point it starts to lose its utility, and kind of I think that's a good thing.
So it sounds like you're not
back to your own.
It sounds like you're not actively
thoughts on what's important,
taking out your money to invest in companies and doing all these crazy things and taking more risk. No, I work so hard to earn it. Like, why would I go about putting it in risky spots to lose it? I think at this point, no crypto.
No crypto. The way I go, my investment philosophy. Crypto, zero crypto. No, I don't do crypto. I don't do any crypto. I did a little bit of real estate, but really it's just in a simple portfolio of public stocks and bonds, just low cost ETFs through Vanguard, and it's about preservation than it is about growth, and that serves me well, and I don't have to care about it a whole lot, and it does what it does. And
I love that.
And like you said,
Spencer, what's your, if you could have I'm borrowing this idea from Tim Ferriss, and I love this question because it kind of reveals what people think, like their just general worldview. If you had a billboard that broadcasts that piece of media information, can be text, video, photo, to the entire world, what would you say? What would you put on that billboard?
Yeah, I think I'd put that quote, that no success can compensate for failure in the home. And I think if we have strong homes, I think it makes the world a better place. I think it'll breed better entrepreneurs. I think it'll breed, more kindness and bring more humanity in the world. And I think if homes are strong, then everything else kind of radiates outward from that. So
Spencer,
that's what I would focus on.
How can people get in touch with you, connect with you, follow what you do?
Yeah, I don't play on social too much these days. I did make some YouTube videos.
They're awesome, by the way,
and people can watch those. But really, just LinkedIn. Thanks. That's probably the only place I check now and then is LinkedIn. So if people want to connect there, free to find me on LinkedIn. Just my name.
Perfect, and links will be down below. If you're on Spotify or listening to a podcast app, you can go to chronos.agency /podcast, I think, and you'll see the latest episodes on our page. Spencer, thank you for your presence and your inspiration and your story. This has been amazing, and I'm glad we did it. And
Appreciate it.
All the best. And I'm excited to see what's next in life for you, and hopefully we'll get you on the podcast again sometime in the future.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks for listening to the E-commerce Profits Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get notified of future episodes.